Hey, welcome to Hear Us Out. I'm Paul,
And I'm Patrick.
and so how's everything with you?
Everything's good. And folks, you may have noticed I just got distracted by something as I was supposed to say something else. He's Paul, I'm Patrick, and you are welcome here on Hear Us Out, where we talk about everything entertainment, movies, TV shows, etc., news of what's happening in the world, or sometimes topics that interest us.
Hmm.
Or is it really fair to say that this interests us, or did this come out of something that almost disgusted us? I was going to ask you if we should title this episode Character Assassination, because what we're actually going to talk about is the destruction of a once great character um, over the course of the movie franchise. And that character, Paul, is.
It's Rambo, John Rambo,
Yeah.
portrayed by Sylvester Stallone. Um, yeah, you were saying like how to kind of title this one and why we kind of talk about it. I think yeah, I think this is it is a topic. It's the topic that interests us, as in
Yeah.
comparing two franchises and how they treated their character in a long term kind of thing, and the movie itself, Gesundheit, the movie itself disgusted us
Yeah.
because it's just so destructive, just so
Yeah, so what
destructive.
brought this up was actually for anybody out there who hasn't seen Rambo Last Blood. I hadn't. It showed up on Amazon Prime, which I apologize last week. I think when I mentioned that Paul should watch it, I said Netflix. It's Amazon Prime. I have absolutely got to put my cards on the table. I am a big First Blood fan. I watched First Blood when I was a kid. It was in my cousin's house. They had it on VHS. I thought it was incredible. And I've watched it many, many times over the years. So I've seen all the Rambo movies, and I've also seen First Blood. So I'm going to be the guy in the room that's drawing a big distinction between First Blood, which was the first Rambo movie, and anything with Rambo at the start of its title, including this one. So, Paul, I watched Last Blood, had lots of thoughts and feelings, so much so that I said to you, please watch it so that we can talk about it on air.
Hmm.
Tell me your impressions. So what did you think of it?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to throw it to the chat and just go, if anyone in the
Oh,
chat has also watched this, give us a one 3 word review, if you will, um,
yeah.
just to challenge you. Yeah. So you piqued my interest quite much because quite a lot because you in last week's video you or last week's live chat you gave us a little bit of an interesting kind of, I guess, face
I-
and
It was
feeling.
a cryptic watch it, not good, not bad. I was trying to be like, you're going to be surprised. And I want to know if you're surprised at how much you liked it or hated it, because it might make me judge you as a person. It might.
Yeah. Well, see, well, let's just let the dogs out immediately.
Yeah, yeah.
It was one of the most hardest watches I could ever do because of the character that I really liked and because of probably the content. And like I've sat through Saw multiple times and have found that an intriguing thing. This was just like, what are they doing? This, like, if I was a fourth year film student, I would have dissected that as my final year project
Yeah.
just to show how terrible that movie was.
Well, to give people, because I agree, my 3 word review, it would probably take more than 3 words, unless I just wanted to say crap, crap, and crap. It was disrespectful crap. There you go. But it was like a Trump propaganda revenge porn.
Yep.
That's what it was. It was very weird. And for anybody who hasn't seen it, so people who've never seen a Rambo movie don't kind of exist, or at least people who don't have some idea about the Rambo character. The Rambo
Hmm.
character we'll go into a little bit later on when we talk about Rambo versus Rocky and how characters get treated. But what you need to know for this movie is Rambo is a ex-military, a Vietnam vet who's had multiple adventures in this film franchise. So if all you're ever going to see is Last Blood, what they want you to know is he's an old guy now. He's a hard ass, and he's found his own way to adjust to the world. Now, if you told me those 3 things about it before I saw it, I'd be like, well, that sounds, appropriate, because that's true. But what they proceed to do is set it just north of the Mexican border. Um, for whatever reason, they decide to kind of isolate him in physical geography as well as emotionally, and have a Mexican lady that he lives with, who obviously, they become friends, and they share the home. I don't think it's not so much a housekeeper relationship, Paul. I don't think that was ever fully cleared up.
Yeah, like I think it's like like old family friend vibes from
Yeah,
this. Like as in this was probably she may know him before he went off to the
yeah,
military and has now returned, kind of thing. So
yeah.
that's interesting.
But there's a highly platonic kind of code, cohabiting symbiotic relationship between Rambo and this lovely lady, this lovely old lady, whose granddaughter also lives there. And that is how the story really kicks off. John Rambo is being a good uncle, a good father figure to this granddaughter. And what they decide to do with the story, and anybody who's worried about spoilers, please don't watch this video at all, because you couldn't talk about it without being explicit. And trust me, the movie is explicit with its views and its actions. It starts off very much as a we've got 90 minutes to get into a lot of reasons why Rambo's going to be angry and kill people, which, again, I wouldn't mind if they're just making a standard Rambo action movie, but they weren't. They were trying to go,
Yeah,
yeah, and this young Mexican girl is going to, or this young Mexican American is going to go back to Mexico to find her father. And the from the first time it's spoken about, first time Mexico is referenced, it is so, oh well, that's just a horrible place. You could never go back there.
yeah. Like it's an interesting kind of like comparison because not comparison or anything like that. Sorry. It's an interesting kind of story point because at the start, like you get the whole vibe of him living like as best as he can and stuff like that. You get to see some elements of his past, quite like kind of dotted around the kind of like home set, the home which goes scenes and stuff like that, especially with his um his tunnel system, which we get to later on.
That's right.
um
Actually, plot point, I should have mentioned that he also keeps himself busy during the day by digging an elaborate tunnel system on the open, dry farmland around him.
Yeah, like he's like a horse like kind of, I guess he
Yeah,
would be a rancher kind of thing, as in he would
yeah,
break in horses and stuff. But there's an interesting point because he goes everybody's kind of hiding it, including me. I'm just trying to keep it in check, and you're just like that's an interesting kind of character piece to it because you're kind of like, oh, they are really trying to kind of bring in the fact that like Rambo himself is quite a lethal person, like he is quite a deadly person. So that's kind of it's kind of interesting. But yeah, the but before that, that's particularly in reference to her, the the kind of like niece character going to find her father. It's literally
yeah,
just like, yeah, I don't want you going down there because everybody's awful there, and like no one, yeah, like what was the line? It's something like you haven't seen what a man can do to another person, and all this, and you're
yeah.
just like, why is this reference beside that she's going to go down to Mexico to see her father who abandoned her? Um,
Well, and that all becomes very clear because that's not it's not coincidence because it's a repeated occurrence all the way through the movie, which I guess we should fast forward. Um, they do spend half their time in the movie in Mexico. So when they're not in his ranch in America talking about how dangerous and horrible Mexico is, they're in Mexico portraying it as this uh, murderers, thieves, rapists kind of vibe, which I don't know where they might have got. Like we have been very decidedly non-political on this channel, but it's really difficult to talk about this movie without seeing how politically charged it is.
yeah,
It's not subtle. Like there is no subtlety to it at all. It's not like we're not drawing lines here and working out the hidden messages. It's right up in front of your face, going, yeah, yeah, yeah. You know where we're coming from on this. So, well,
yeah. Like I said to Patrick that the two things that I like I would not be surprised about. And one of them I really hope happened. And the first one is the one that I really hope happened and wouldn't be surprised is that Sylvester Stallone was paid a fuck ton of money for that movie. And the second one would be that that money or some of the money for the movie came from somehow came from the Trump administration, or not even the Trump administration, but like somehow came from like
Donors or backers.
yeah,
Yeah,
that have probably some kind of tie, because like it came out like what 2 3 years ago.
it's about 2 years ago, I think. Yeah,
Yeah. So like in inside the Trump administration, but it is very politically charged in the sense that north or south of the border is not a good place, and the only like one of the biggest messages is the only good Mexican is an Americanized like person from Mexico, which is like,
yeah.
what are you doing? Like even her
It
like
it it is extremely. And you're. I think I know the one you're about to. So go for that. The first and best example of that.
like the first like to find her father, she asks an old friend, and immediately, like, she goes down to the old friend, and immediately the old friend who lives in Mexico is portrayed as backstabbing and money grubbing and kind of like checking out
Like
her jewelry and be like,
a
this
gang
is
member. She's portrayed as the kind of, if you've never seen a gang, here's what you think a gang member would look like. Like it was almost cartoony. She was like, this is what old people think gang members look like.
hmm,
It was, yeah, it was cartoonish.
like, and it, like, yeah, it's from there. It just sets a tone that just like it's just like this shouldn't be in like a Rambo movie. Like this is something akin to something else. Like this
Yeah.
is like
Well, I think we're far enough in that we should probably give a synopsis, so then we can break it back down. So
mhm.
essentially, what happens is Rambo's young kind of adoptive niece, so to speak, heads down to find her father. Her father is, because he's from Mexico, he's a scumbag. Was a scumbag, still is a scumbag, always will be a scumbag. That's the way the film lays it out. Rambo is, only finds out that she's gone down and is worried, but isn't that worried until he realizes that she's been kidnapped by human traffickers who basically force her into prostitution and are giving her meth or another drug of some sort. So Rambo goes down south to get her back. And
Oh,
you would think, right, that's where action's going to start. But yeah.
yeah, that was the other interesting thing. So, yeah, so after she just to break up the cinemas, I'm sorry because
No, no,
I'm
please
really
do.
pissed off. Yeah, her dad's a scumbag, rejects her. She goes out partying with her friend, immediately gets kidnapped by by people forcing her into the sex work. The drug part doesn't come until the end, later on, which makes it worse
Mm.
because it's like, oh, this can't get worse. Like
Yeah.
this is pretty fucking bad already, and then it just goes up a notch. Like, yeah, so sorry for
And
breaking up the
and
synopsis.
no, 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 please, that's the best way for this synopsis to go. So as I hit a new low, please jump in.
Right.
So Rambo's off to Mexico to bring her back at all costs because he's got nothing to lose. He never had, he never will. He's going to kill. They've awakened the beast, which we will talk about later. How that's really disrespectful to the character. But he gets to Mexico, does some investigation, hurts some people. So for anybody who was waiting for a Rambo bit of violence, they got it. But what they got was like this. It was pure torture Rambo kind of violence. It wasn't the kind of uh, you know wartime
Y-
mentality. This was revenge Rambo full on, and he
Yeah.
didn't even know what he was getting vengeance for yet. 100%. Um, but he fails. He fails to save his daughter, and he gets an ass kicking from these bad, human trafficking ring people. And that's when we meet the pretty much the only person in Mexico who has a redeeming quality, I think.
Yeah, like just to say, it's surrogate daughter kind of thing going on where she goes after him.
Mm,
But yeah, the only redeeming character that lives south of the border, as it says, is an Americanized like journalist, which goes Mexican lady who's barely in the film.
yeah,
Like she
she's
gets
a plot device
yeah,
to make him. She's the one that nurses him back to health and says, "I helped you because they did this to my sister, and my sister died. What are you going to do about it? You should just leave this. They'll kill you. Because somebody had to say to Rambo, outside of the bad guys, you should let this one go. Her
Yeah,
whole entire purpose was to have a negative character say, you should let this go, Rambo, so that he could do the Rambo 3, fuck him moment, kind of, no, I'm bad, and I'm here to stay. So yeah,
yeah.
do you want to pick up the synopsis from there, actually, because it's tiring and I can't stand
Yeah,
this movie.
like we get some like just when they beat him up for the first time, the two main characters, two main villains are then shown, which are two brothers who are traffickers, Mexican traffickers and gang members, and they take a particular interest. Then this is where the next low goes, where it's just like, oh, because someone stood up to us, an American stood up to us as well, because they make that point. Um, which goes, we're now going to drug her, get her like addicted on heroin and everything, like that, and then like particularly use her up as much as possible. Which we can get a whole bunch of scenes of her being injected, and then her lying on a bed with a gentleman walking. I don't even say gentleman, a man walking out of the room, kind of thing, repeatedly. I just figured out what this
It's
reminds
it.
me of. Um,
What
Hostel
does it remind you of?
reminds me of
Okay,
Hostel.
so yeah,
Um,
it's got a torture horror vibe to it already.
yeah, and then after, so yeah, the journalist, kind of lady who finds him and nurses him back to bed thing, yeah, warns him about it. He then goes like, what we thought would be Rambo-esque, which is literally a 5 minute scene of him shooting people in the faces and trying to get the women out of the kind of house that they're being used in, and they all are terrified of these people, so they don't leave. Once again showing that they're all indoctrinated into this awful life and everything like that. Um, he finds his surrogate daughter, which he then removes from the house and goes north to bring her home. Which goes, which which then brings us to another political weird point, which is um, it's shot of like a barbed wire fence with the sign on it saying, north of this is the United States territory. Anyone who passes this point and stuff, and like Rambo goes, ah, fuck it, and just drives through, which is a very sour point in the fact that they need a wall to keep these people out, to be able to stop
Yeah.
people from crossing the border.
Can we take one moment just on that, because there are multiple scenes in the movie where it's transitioning from Mexico to America, and vice versa. Obviously, when he's trying to rescue his, what was the good phrase you came up with there? The
Surrogate daughter.
surrogate daughter. Thank you. They're on that journey back. There are shots from outside the vehicle at various points that show the new sections of super fence and how majestic they are. And it seems slightly out of place until you realize those shots are then usually followed up by, when the bad guys finally decide to follow Rambo north, they come to an even flimsier section of barbed wire, because that's the message here. It's difficult to cross if we have the proper stuff. There's no humanity to any of the message at all. And this isn't political speech. I'm not even getting into what I believe is right or wrong in this. I'm critiquing the movie for being so ham-fisted, whatever its view was. Like,
See,
it wasn't even artfully done.
yeah, like this is my thing, is like they show shots of the wall and they show it in majestic as possible helicopter and really nice, like you can tell that the cinematographer was definitely told that he needs to make the wall sexy. But the thing is that the when the guys do decide to go north to go after him, they just go to a building, go into the cellar, go through a tunnel, and then come out of the warehouse on the other side, and you're just like, what do you do? Like, if you're
Well,
gonna, you should just you've already shown flimsiness of the wall. Why not just show that again? Like,
yeah.
not a tunnel, because that just proves that your wall doesn't goddamn work. So it's weird
Uh,
mixed messaging.
But it's that thing of, yeah, I don't think they're thinking,
No,
with a lot of this message, Paul, is maybe the key thing, because you can tell by the stereotyping of even the vehicles that said, evil drug people are using. It's like, anybody out there who's into cars, it's G-Wagons. It's G-Wagons left, right, and center, because that's the, blacked out drug dealer, SUV truck of choice. But anyway, if we get to the point of them coming across to America, we've maybe skipped over one thing, and I skipped over it. On the return journey, spoiler alert, his surrogate daughter dies. So it's a very, very tragic moment. And it is, even in the bad movie that it is, you're like, gosh, they're really going as hard and as low as they can. And it's like they want to go, we're stripping every excuse for him to show humanity after this, for Rambo to show any humanity after this. We're breaking him down to the war machine,
Hmm.
because that's what we're going to unleash in the third act of the movie. And when she passes away, I was like, oh, they've gone full. It was dark. It was torture horror before this. Then she passed away. There was a definite sense the movie was about to go. And now in the last 30 minutes that we have, you are going to have John Rambo doing the last act of a Rambo movie, except there's going to be zero mercy, um, in any sort of ethical way.
Yeah, like that's the I was we were discussing because the conflict that happens at the end, which we'll go into a little bit more,
Yeah,
but the conflict at the end is meant to be like the kind of like main action piece to the Rambo Last Blood series, or movie. Like, there's no conflict. There's no
no,
conflict at all. It's literally just shots of him murdering people, and
yes.
like
In the aforementioned tunnels,
yeah,
which Paul you christened the murder caves,
yeah, the murder caves and murder tunnels. Yeah, like
which I thought was a genius because that, as it turns out, that was the entire story there. There was no nodding to him, pulling so far back from society that he's hiding himself underground and keeping relics of his past because of his ongoing and extreme PTSD. No, we did this because we want to have a tunnel sequence where we can have him kill people in more and more violent and gruesome and interesting ways. We want to make sure that if he shoots somebody in the head, we show the head not just like getting shot, but getting ripped backwards, etc., etc. Like, it is graphic, which I
mhm.
don't have a problem with in and of itself in a movie. I
Yeah,
am not saying boo to graphic violence; it has its place. This wasn't it, except it was because it was the film they were making. He spends 20 minutes just brutally shredding people.
yeah.
Uh, and
It's
and
like
that's it. That's the point of it. He's just shredding people so that you can have your revenge porn moment of, yeah, look at those dirty damn bastards that did all these terrible things in the first half of the movie.
yeah, and it's not even mentioned the reason, the ultimate reason why um they have come after Rambo is another kind of torture porn moment. Is before he went to rescue his surrogate daughter from the brothel, he brutally murdered the brother of the main thing of the other. So the two brothers of the main bad guys, he brutally murders one of them, like cuts off his head, and uh
Mm.
you see the scene, the body, and you're just like okay, cool, now we've got like you're just showing more. Like, this is
Yeah,
the only way that this is acceptable is if I just accepted that Rambo was a psychopath from the
yeah.
beginning, which makes that character less like, it means that I then have to accept the fact that in First Blood and all the other Rambos, he's a psychopath. So I should
Yeah.
never have felt anything for this character.
Well,
So
we
I'm
shouldn't
thinking,
mention those just yet because we have to
I
finish
know,
this movie, and I think we should sprint to the finish because he suggested to the main bad guy that's left, he's I'm going to tear your heart out, essentially, or something to that effect.
yeah,
And he literally does it. That is the literal death scene for the bad guy. He
yeah,
stabs him, cuts him open, pulls out his heart, and kind of looks at him while it does a bit of a comedy beat in his hand.
hmm,
And they end the movie on the note of him then going, after committing unbelievable, unspeakable violent acts, and sitting on his porch because his war is over. And that's the bit, that's where I got really, really annoyed. And I thought, my God.
well, like there's that part because he does. So in the conflict, he does get shot once
Mm,
by the main bad guy, and it's like suggested that maybe this is the reason that this is also the last blood and his last war, is because that
yeah,
he is now dying. But it's just
yeah,
like yeah, he then but he yeah, it's just it like the last 5 minutes of the movie before the credits roll, which Patrick has a big thing on that first. So the last 5 minutes of the film is a monologue of like how people are awful, how like sometimes you just got to do this thing, and like how he was never like it's a try to rehash some of the best moments of monologues from the first film because the credits are coming, and as I said, I'll let Patrick kind of like because you can see how angry he's annoyed about it. But it's just
Well,
it's the tie it all together and stuff like that. So him sitting on the thing and maybe passing away and it being Last Blood is just it's ridiculous. It's like where
it
was the
is.
heart of this? There's like you haven't given us any heart throughout the film. You've just given us an engine of death with very little personality, and then he gives a monologue in which we're meant to feel heartfelt for this character. Like there's no
Yeah.
like every time he's murdered someone. Sorry, every time he murdered someone in this film, there's been no remorse for him like in any kind of sense. There's never kind of like, oh, I have to go kill these people because they've hurt my like. Obviously, that's the
Yeah.
worst case, but there's nothing. He's literally just a death machine. So like when he gives this monologue about how his war is over and how like people do terrible things and he had to step up and stuff like that. It's like I don't give a shit. I'm sorry, you're not a human anymore. You're just some kind of
Yeah.
knife wielding arm movement machine that like that's it.
Well,
Like
you're tearing hearts out of people. It kind of speaks for itself. But okay, so how could you be more annoyed? Like, had the film's gone pretty badly, roll credits, and you just think, right, well, obviously it's done now. It can't do any more damage. Well, the reason we're doing this episode, in my opinion, is because of the rage that I feel for this very next second. The minute the credits roll, the first thing they do is start showing iconic scenes from First Blood, and then obviously they go through the other Rambo films. But the idea that they say Rambo Last Blood and then it goes back to First Blood, relating them back directly, going, it's that guy, it's that story that we told, we've now concluded it. Whereas my thesis would be that story was important, incredible, and very valuable. And what you've just done is do it the most disrespect that I could have possibly imagined, even if I'd been allowed to sit down and think of how to disrespect it. Like
yeah.
it was uh, enraging. It absolutely made me spasm with anger that they kind of did that. It was just awful.
Like because it took me a second because it took me a while to realize I was just like these are all scenes from like these are all important scenes as well from because
Yeah,
there's the movie of him there's the opening part which is him walking
he's
into town in the first movie.
yeah he's walking a lonely road. It's a,
Yeah,
it's a long road, and it's all part of the original song. It's showing him isolated after serving his country and dealing with that isolation and losing his friends. What the whole story ends up being is encapsulated as him drifting along a road trying to
hmm,
find home somehow, some way.
yeah,
And they thought, let's use that 5 minutes after somebody pulls out a heart and goes, yeah. It was weird.
yeah. Like it's like we'll move on to the kind of like I guess the kind of I guess breakdown of kind of how they've disrespected this character. Yes, how in other movies they
Hmm.
very well kind of showed the respect and everything like that throughout the years and stuff of other characters. Um, but yeah, it was just when you messaged me saying or when you told me on last week's video to watch this, I like you as I said, you got my interest, and like I didn't know what I was in for because like I thought I was going to be into kind of like just a bad film. Like it was just
Yeah.
going to be like, oh, this is just a bad film. Like it's just a terrible film with a character that like a lot of people really like, you know. And it was like what I got was this like oh, this is just a giant middle finger to John Rambo and like
Yeah.
to the story of which was the First Blood is a part of an anti-establishment kind of like movie, and this is very much like
Mm.
yeah, the establishment's actually grand, like, and you're just like no, it's not.
Yeah, and the complexity and nuance. So I guess let's take look, we've given it away in the thumbnail, etc. Let's take Rocky and let's take Rambo. They're both
Hmm.
Sylvester Stallone. Okay, one's 5 films, the other one is, if you include the Creeds, I think 7 or 8. I think it's 7.
Like
If you include the two Creeds, right?
like
Yeah.
we'll We'll include the two creeds, but with a hashtag kind of thing. Well, not about a hashtag, with an asterisk part to it, because
Mm.
there's a point in which, like later on, I would like to make specifically
Oh,
about the
cool.
creeds and stuff like that. You know.
Well, if you take them, because we're going to end up running out of time if we go into each movie. But
Hmm.
anybody out there, if you haven't seen the movies, we're not going to do synopsises of each. But trust me when I say the Rambo character at his essence, when you meet John Rambo in that first movie, there are strong messages in that movie about how veterans are treated, about how the public views or appreciates or doesn't appreciate service people. There's small town mentality. There's everything from just sadistic people in police forces, which is weird to be saying these days. There are many, many, many facets, and then there is an absolute wrong that John Rambo does. He is pushed too far, and in his words, they drew first blood. And he tells them, "Don't push me, don't push me, I'll push back," and he breaks. But it's never considered that what he did was good, and all the way up to the point where he then after his old army sergeant comes back and talks him down, has a breakdown in the most important scene in the movie, and explains and displays his inner turmoil, his inner horror, his inability to adjust. Talks about the things he's seen and done, and it's incredible. That's how they started that character.
Yeah.
Rocky, underdog story, lots and lots of good angles as far as society goes as well. Maybe a little more simplistic, but still, Rocky doesn't win in the end either. It's about Rocky fought hard, didn't win, but it's about yay. Look at he tried hard. He's a good guy. He's in love with the pet store lady Adrian. There's a sweetness to Rocky that's played out nicely.
Yeah, like
They
it's
both started there.
yeah, like it's a Rocky film is kind of like the show of the will of a person kind of thing going against all the kind of odds and stuff like that. And as you said, it's a surprise because you can't call it an action film or kind of like I guess a sports hero film in the sense of kind of he loses at the end, but he's
Yeah,
still like the point was the fight and the point was lasting as long as he did, you know. So like
exactly.
it's so yeah, so you've started off these two characters really really well. You've given us a baseline of what they are, which is you've portrayed it really really well, and you've decided okay these characters should like these characters can go on. We could definitely move on with these characters and tell a little bit more of their story,
Yeah,
which I'm going to take the Rocky one if you please.
fair play. Go for it.
They they bring in the fact that like the character in which he loses, which is Apollo Creed, into the second one is him again, and
It's
they
the
do fight,
rematch. Yeah,
yeah, the rematch thing, which is like it's obvious that they want to close this off, and they do eventually want to have like Rocky with all his
the
will
champ.
and everything like that, yeah, to eventually get his title and or to get his win, kind of thing. So you can definitely see the reasoning behind them doing the second film for Rocky.
Yeah,
Um,
and they
Rambo.
do they do quite a nice job in Rocky 2 as well of focusing on the hubris and the ego of Apollo Creed. Continuing the theme from the first one, but maybe focusing a little bit more on it. Like Rocky 2, pretty good movie. But
Mhm.
again, first movies are dramas with, sporting drama or action drama, let's call Rambo. The second movie in the Rocky franchise is closer to sports action movie, but with still some good dramatic leanings. Okay, Rambo First Blood Part 2 um, really does enjoy its action. It's okay, it's where Rambo just does all the things that Rocky does except faster. As in, it moved to the action phase faster than Rocky did. Um, doesn't mean though that it didn't start off with John Rambo in prison going, you remember that last film where he went nuts and killed a load of people who had been, mean to him, don't get me wrong. Um, but they were like, here you go. He's serving his time. And the only way he's liberated is to go and serve his country again to help. Um, and he's thrust into the action. He doesn't just show up and start shooting people.
Yeah,
So two films in, you've got that transition from drama to action. By the third film for both franchises, Paul,
yeah, they gone a little
it's
further into
action.
the, yeah. they've both gone into the more like they've gone into the sub action like genres specifically to their style. So,
Yeah.
Rocky is a sports action or action sports film, and then like Rambo is a militarized like sports or sorry militarized action film, and
Yeah,
like
it's well, the third Rambo is off to Afghanistan. The second Rambo, he's saving prisoners of war. By the way, important note: the bad guy in the second Rambo, the first person that he could legitimately kind of kill, if you know what I mean, who left him to rot when he was saving prisoners of war, he decides not to and says, you save all the prisoners of war, you do your job, and I'm going to leave you alone, and I'm going to go off and live in the forest. Like Rambo is still redeemed for any actions, not any actions, but for the actions he had to take. He's still motivated by the end of that one. In the third one, when they are in Afghanistan, helping the Taliban, by the way, because that's how politics was then. It was a different time, different world. Obviously, still fighting the Russians, and it was like, let's do all the cool things from Rambo 2 that people liked with exploding arrows. People seem to like when he's baby oiled and holding the big gun. Um, he kills a helicopter with a tank, literally. Like he drives a tank on the ground into a helicopter that for some reason flies straight at him at tank level and
yeah,
doesn't do what helicopters can famously do, which is fly up the way.
that's
I
what they
know.
do.
So
Um,
you can definitely say the third one. The third Rambo is like the fourth Rocky, because everybody who knows only one Rocky knows the Ivan Drago, I must break you. It's America
yeah,
versus Russia.
because the third one is isn't that the one with Hulk Hogan in it?
Yeah, and BA
But yeah, no,
Mr. T. No,
it's
Mr.
B.A.
T. But
Baracus.
Hulk Hogan's in the start of it, yeah. And look, to be fair, I want to kind of save Rocky 3 a little bit because
Okay,
I think it was trying to talk about it did try and talk about the excess of being a champ, and how money can change people.
but
Because
this is
it lent heavily into the kind of look what happened to the boy done good when too many people and too much money showed up.
well, this is yeah, but this is the thing. As in comparing the stories, it seems like in the third Rambo film they start to dehumanize him in the sense
Mm,
that he is becoming more just a vehicle to show an action film, whereas like the third Rocky film, like okay, well, if you want to say a little, it has a little bit more heart and a little bit more of a story
yeah,
to tell on the kind of like the pressures of being the champ and everything, whereas the fourth movie is just like solidly an action film, but
mm,
it has like heartfelt moments that are akin to the franchise. You know,
yes,
like as in they're you trying to compare this because in the fourth Rambo film, which goes they're trying to get keys of kind of like Rambo hasn't been able to survive in the real world, so he's just gone back to the world that he knows and just trying to live like he's a snake like hunter and like
yeah. A bit of a
he's
riverboat man in Thailand, sort of thing. Yeah,
yeah, like so, like he's kind of like I can't deal with society, so I'm just going to go to a place that like society is a little bit more looser and a little bit more kind of like leave that person alone kind of thing.
yeah,
Um, like, but that's that part, as in like the relationship between him and the missionary female lead is like the only part that you can look back on and go there's Rambo, and but their interactions is probably like a grand total of like 20 minutes of any meaning of a film that's probably about 2 hours like an hour and 40 minutes, and it
yeah,
just like have they just decided that they've just slotted in this is the part where Rambo will now be a
yeah,
human and then the rest of it will
yeah,
just be a weapon, and it does like that part. Whereas the entire first movie was like entirely human. Then the
mm,
second one was like a little bit more like a little bit less human, more a little bit action. Then the third one was like yeah action, and then the
it was like a
fourth
toy
one
set.
yeah like and then the fourth one they were just like oh better bring it back to kind of human thing. So but give it 20
And
minutes.
look, I will give them credit for because that fourth one was called it was called John Rambo, wasn't? No,
I think it was just
it
called
was just called
Rambo.
Rambo. Yeah,
Yeah,
just Rambo. Whereas the kind of adjoining fifth movie in the Rocky side was called Rocky Balboa.
Hmm.
So that's a funny parallel that they just went for the character name. But they, at that point, we all thought that was the last Rambo movie.
Yeah.
And the same thing for Rocky Balboa. We thought it was the last Rocky movie. As it turns out, it was just for the Rocky solo character, if you exclude Creed. I think they tried a little bit. And if they'd ended the Rambo character, out there in Thailand with that story, and they added a bit of ultra violence and limbs exploding, which is something I think that's the movie where they learned that that's fun for some of the audience who watch
Hmm.
Rambo. Which they'd done a little bit in Rambo 3, but Rambo 4 Rambo, there was a lot of bullets hitting people and spalling them apart, etc. They at least tried to go, okay, this guy, as you've seen him in all the previous movies, some of which were action films, he's a big lethal weapon, but he's a big sad lethal weapon who has had a tough life, he wasn't born this way, he was made this way, but he actually was born to be made this way because he wanted to help people. There's a real sense of why does Rambo do it? He does it because he thinks it needs to be done, not just because he's a psycho. Same thing with Rocky in the other side of the house. They're still respecting the character all the way up until the end, if that's where it all ended. But Last Blood, as we've talked about, takes everything about that Rambo character and says, nah, all he was all along was this psychotic death machine who, if you give him a good enough excuse, you'll be happy to watch him just tear people apart.
Yeah.
And that wipes out any delicacy to what they had done previously. It is
Like,
how you end a character's arc awfully, because you don't just tell a bad ending, you completely disrespect and wipe out everything that came before.
yeah, like when you were saying that like Rambo like kind of like leaves it off quite well. The last scene in Rambo is him going home. It's
Mm,
him walking along the lonely road and then coming to the driveway of his home, and then
yeah,
him walking down the driveway, and it then pans, I believe, onto the letterbox that says
yeah,
Rambo. And it's just like
yeah. It's like his
that's
dad's place or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, and it's just like it's like okay, I can excuse this. I said the 20 minutes of humanity that was in the film to the action film, but that ending scene was just like this okay, this is a nice way. I will excuse the actiony kind of like thing of how easily he just transformed into the Green Beret that he was, and like and murder machine thing. Like because of that last scene, which is like, oh, he finally feels like he can go home. He finally feels that maybe the things that he has done and stuff like that, maybe seen in kind of like a better, not a better light, but kind of like the reasoning behind it, as in he went to war to protect his family, his country, everybody he loves, and stuff like that. Like it seems like he's a very loving person inside that has the ability to kill, and that scene really shows a lot of it, of him going home and being hopefully being accepted and finally accepting himself and stuff like that. The second film, as you said, is literally just you could replace Rambo with just a robot arm with a knife, and you would
Mhm.
have gotten the same humanity in the damn film. Like
Yeah.
it does feel like that film they did go back over all the Rambo films and went, okay, where is the audience like the favorite parts? Okay, cool. We're pushing those to the extreme because we want Rambo to be rememberable in the kind of like violence thing, and they're just like, no, that's not the point. Like,
It's if somebody said, write a Rambo film. Well, I want you to write Last Blood, and all they knew about Rambo was the pictures they'd seen. That's essentially it. They were like, oh, I've seen lots of pictures from Rambo 3 where he's got guns, and I've seen pictures from First Blood where he's, built traps that, spear people or hurt people. So therefore, that's who that character must be.
mhm.
It's like if somebody had, instead of actually knowing the Rocky franchise, which they did when they went into Creed, because in Creed, and I'm going to let you definitely bring up what I'm curious about what it's going to be in Creed with Rocky, they made him, the sweet Rocky that he always was, and his fight ended up being with cancer. And it's they tried to um show that even Rocky can be knocked down, but he did get up one more time. That's your kind of your clench there. He got up and he fought cancer, and it keeps the humanity. he's visiting graves for the last two movies. He's been visiting graves of people. Adrian passed away, Paulie passes away. He's pure heart. Rambo, when he's running, or Rocky when he's running up those steps in the first movie, and everybody's cheering for him because you're so happy. That's pure heart. He won't stay down. He loses the fight, but people love him for his heart. They didn't lose sight of that. Rambo started off in First Blood as an important story about why we shouldn't just treat people like utilities, and how we should have more understanding that society isn't very good at helping and dealing with the people who have put everything on the line for them. And to take that and do Last Blood as your closing chapter is, I think it's just disgusting, to be honest.
It's proving the point of the first film. Really, it's you're. This is as in like it's as in you essentially you betray these people in movies and stuff like that as like action stars and stuff like that,
Oh, I see what you're
and
saying.
you remove the humanity in them by just having them as engines of war. Whereas the first
Yeah.
movie, First Blood, was to show you that there's people behind them. There's people who like killing someone does take something away from you. No matter like there's very few. I'd say there's a particular mindset to be able to do it without it actually affecting you. And like as much as people think that like the military is definitely like the people who join the military and stuff like that are specifically those type of people. They do get affected. You can see them like they get affected by it. In their kind of like macho, like kind of like showing of kind of strength and stuff like that because they don't want to show what they might feel and stuff like that. So it's why we have so many like Armageddon, or sorry, not Armageddon. Apocalypse Now is showing like the horribleness of war and stuff like that, and how it affects different people and stuff like that. With, which goes the character at first thinking of like committing, killing himself and stuff until the
Yeah.
MPs come and grab him. Like by having the Last Blood film, you were proving the fact that you want to dehumanize these people and
Yeah.
show them
You
as
want
kind
your
of like,
murder machines.
yeah, as action stars and things to revere and stuff like that. Whereas in the first one, it's showing that you gotta like society has to start looking after them. Like they can't
Mm.
just they can't be like, oh, thank you for your service and now you're a pariah because you can definitely kill me with your thumbs. Like that's not how this works. Like
No.
so like
You're right.
whereas
It's a message saying, if we make you the object of our anger and angst in this revenge porn movie, then you'll have served your purpose, which is not cool. But I have to ask, because I don't want it to get forgotten or left out. What was your asterisk for Creed?
so the reason that the Creed films are important to me is we're trying to bring out the fact that like this is how you treat a character. This is how you like the reason that the Rocky films are better treatments of the Rocky character is because there's a nice thread all the way through it of kind of like the ups and downs of this character and stuff. Like even with which goes the fourth film with Drive
Yeah.
Off, like there's still a thread there that plays back to like Apollo Creed and stuff like that. And the reason that I'm putting an asterisk beside the Creed movies is the reason that those films have succeeded and the reason that they are seen as also good films is because you have built a foundation of
Yeah.
really of like good story there, and it's a nice continuation of the next generation of
Yeah.
characters, and it has like where you're still telling the Rocky Balboa story, but you're also now telling the Creed story, which is Apollo Creed's son taking on now the trying to become the champ and everything like that. It's a nice continuation of the story without having Rocky Balboa as the main character, and you can only do that because Rocky Balboa has been established and has been treated right. You
Yeah.
cannot in any way make a new film. You could not make a new franchise off the Rambo film. You could have because there's a character in the Rambo film who's like he's called Babyface. He's a sniper. He's like everybody thinks that he's like soft and stuff like that. You could
Oh yeah, this is
if
the
you
fourth one. He's an English
y-
actor. Yeah, I know
yeah,
that guy.
like you could have treated if you treated this right because if you treated Rambo right a little bit more, you could have continued on with that character's story if you really wanted to. Like I know
Yeah.
action films don't get a sub franchise to them much and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But if you had told the
Hobbs and Shaw
character,
would beg to disagree.
yeah,
I'm
um,
joking.
but that's also not a great film.
Yeah, where there's money, there's a lack of taste.
Yeah,
So
but
quite often.
it just shows the treatment of the characters and how you can continue their story on in like from the eyes of another character and show like the foundation of the franchise is solid, whereas
Yeah.
Rambo, like if they in any way try to reboot the story of like because actually films get reboots rather, the only reboot that we're going to get is essentially just another murder machine. We won't get
Yeah.
First Blood in the same way unless a deep fan like yourself, Patrick, is
No, well,
somehow
yeah.
is
I'm
somehow the
I'm
director and stuff.
I'm not putting my name forward for that. I'm glad to let that franchise die. I've had conversations in one of our viewers actually has had this conversation with me on an evening out, talking about things like Rocky and Rambo, and it's like, oh, because I always say Rocky was the film, First Blood was the film. Everything after that, they were just the action follow-ups
Hmm.
because they are pale imitations in some ways. They still have good things, they still have bad things, but I never said any of them were terrible or were completely disrespectful to the character or any of that. Until now, I can say that. Now I can say of all we've got between 7 Rocky movies and 5 Rambo movies, that's 12 movies to choose from. I am not going to complain about 11 of them, but one of them will go down in history for me as one of it's like the title of the episode. It's how not to end a character. It's a perfect textbook example of how you take something that had value, was turned into an action toy, a figurine practically, was pulled back a little bit by people who cared a little bit more, but maybe didn't have the money or the art to do it right. um, but it could have ended after Rambo, and we'd have been like, well, the First Blood, the John J. or John is it John J. Rambo character has not been completely destroyed. They cartooned him up for a while, but not destroyed. Now, I never ever want to hear anybody making a Rambo movie again. It's
Yeah,
it's definitely done.
like I think this is the biggest problem is that like the last films in the Rocky franchise may have not been the best kind of films in the world, but they did not in any way sour the franchise, which now
No,
you have to look back because like as much as you're going to look back fondly on First Blood and the treatment of that character and the origins of it, it's just going to play back in your mind the reminder of the
yeah.
fact that the last film in the franchise is Last Blood and how much they fucked with that character. Like they took the
so,
worst parts of the character and made the last film into about that, and it's
so
just
to
like
answer the original question, what the simple answer to how do you end a character story arc? Any way you want, as long as you don't destroy everything that came before. And that's the key thing. I think any character in the history of time that's gone off in a film franchise and ended a way I didn't like, I'm fine with. But if you wipe them out, if you wipe everything through actions that they take, everything that they were ever possibly represented or were, if you take that all away in one fell swoop, that's how not to end a character story. That's it.
yeah, like
Um,
I was reminded of because I was reminded of a quote from I cannot remember in any way the classic the like classical studies person. It could be Ulysses or what like or like anything, but it's essentially storytelling is essentially a person and their actions, but their actions are based on that person, as in their personality needs to warrant those actions. And whereas in Rambo Last Blood, they've literally stripped everything of that character's kind of like reasoning and everything like that, except for the ability of him to be able to murder people.
Oh, he
And
did have one character trait, and that was revenge. I think he was written by somebody who thinks one dimensionally, and they're
no,
like, ah, I know, we'll give him a motive. His motive will be revenge. That's who he'll be. He'll be vengeance, and that's as far as their tiny little brain could do it.
yeah, what I'm kind of saying is like like the first one, it's he wanted to help and he also like he but he didn't want. Sorry, It's that he didn't want to be pushed past his breaking point. He was constantly warning people about it. And then the second film is about him like trying to help, and the third film is about him helping, and then the fourth film is about him helping, and then the fifth film is him about getting revenge. It's literally a turnabout, as in like
Yeah,
he is constantly pushed throughout the films in the other ones to be the helpful hand, because but ultimately being reluctant in the sense that he knows that it's like the Hulk. He knows he'll win the fight, so why
yeah,
get into the fight? And it's him being
yeah.
pushed enough to get into the fight. Whereas this, it's not about him being pushed enough. It's just it was an inevitability. There was no pushing. There was literally just like, you're going to fight these people. There's no
Yeah,
pushing. We know it.
I now know that there's definitely probably a Hulk Rambo Photoshop out there somewhere in our future. I do want to say, Paul, we've gone uncharacteristically long without looking at the comments.
Mm,
I think to sum up, because I think the comments are where we're going next. To sum up our feelings and all this, neither of these characters are my favorite characters in the history of time, or yours, I'm guessing. Uh,
no.
but I feel the disrespect for anybody who is a massive Rambo fan. I feel it on their behalf, and I would not have come up with another reason to do this episode, because I can't think of another good example in anywhere else in cinema where we've got a franchise um, with a main character or a recurring character that's being treated as badly. So if anybody out there, that's my question for this. Anybody who's watched this long, can you think of a character who's been in 3 films or more that has been completely crapped on at the very end, and anything character writing wise? So
Yeah,
what?
like you go ahead and read the comments. Like my closing remark is just the way that you don't like. There's this whole thing is how you treat a character within a franchise. My whole reason is that they removed the complete humanity and drive towards the Rambo character at the end, which sours the thing. Whereas in Rocky, there is a continuous trend of being the best, and what that entails to be, or like being the person that always gets up, the willpower and strength, the heart to get back up. And that's a thread that goes all the way through, and then in the Creed films is transferred onto another character, the will to go on to get up after every fight. As I said, humanity and character is completely removed from the last film in Rambo, and it's just a death machine, which is how you, and then to try to falsely tie it back to the other films, which are better done, is kind of just like, why would you in any way, like, unless you knew what you were doing and knew how bad this film was, and had to in some way try to justify your actions by going, but look, it's a Rambo film, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
You know,
you know what? I probably even would have been. I would have been more forgiving if they hadn't used their turn of phrase of Last Blood as well. Because, like I said at the very start of all this, for me, there's First Blood, and then there's Rambo movies. That's the way it was before I saw this one. One's a great movie, the other are Rambo films, which are guns and action, etc. Um, now, I've had had a read of the chat, and Lisa has joined us. Hey, Lisa. She said finally able to catch a live stream, and we're talking about stuff she has no interest in.
hmm,
I will say, if you have no interest in action movies or sports action movies or anything like that, um, it's worth seeing Rambo worth seeing First Blood from a filmmaking point of view. It's a very interesting movie. It feels like an action movie in parts, but it really doesn't play like an action movie the whole way through. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, check it out. Now there's a couple of interesting mentions of Rambo v Rocky,
yeah.
which, let's face it, Freddy versus Jason. You could now do Rambo v Rocky. If they made a Creed movie where Rocky was one dimensional and just pathetic, you could go, well, now they're just both silly characters. Let's have them fight each other. Um,
Was it?
Before that, there was too much credibility to either character to have a Rambo v Rocky.
Yeah, I would say that the like I would have in no way connected the Rambo Rocky movies in any way, or like characters in any way, to the character in the Expendables.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah.
now it's literally, that's what I feel like, as in like there's a little bit of
Oh,
heart, from Rocky that's in that character, and like all death from
and
the
a whole
Rambo
lot of
side.
violence from Rambo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I
Wow.
feel.
Yeah, the Expendables. I hadn't even thought of that. The Expendables. That good call. The Expendables is an interesting part of the Venn diagram between those two Sylvester Stallone characters. We
Um,
do have one suggestion of where it's happened before. Freddy Krueger going from sinister to basically being a bit of comic relief in places. Not a huge fan of the franchise. You're the horror man of the two, so I'm going to throw that one over to you.
like this is an interesting point because like I wasn't going to bring it up. It does seem to happen more in the horror genre than it does probably in most genres that I know about. Like I would probably say James Bond might have had an element of this, but has been drawn back. As in like I would say that the Pierce Brosnan years was seen as kind of like a little bit of like I like the Pierce Brosnan years, don't get me wrong, but as in it's like they may have treated the character a little bit more kind of like gadgety, kind of like Inspector Gadgety,
Yeah,
rather than James Bond's. So, but then they brought it back like with Casino Royale and then
yeah.
the rest. Um, but like yeah, Freddy Krueger, Jason, like which was so Freddy Krueger, Jason, which was the Halloween films with
Oh,
which is
Michael Myers.
yeah, like all those films they eventually get worse and worse, and then what tends to happen is a reboot in which they kind of drag the character back, as in what happened with Halloween, as in they went to like the what is this? Well, the third film we had a whole thing about.
Oh
Like we
yeah.
talked about the
I
Halloween.
will stick a link in the description down below to where we cover, and I'll even give a timestamp to where we cover the, because I remember trying to make the map and it drove me nuts of the Halloween timeline and how crazy it is. But also, yeah, that third film and how, yeah, Halloween's just kind of crazy. But yeah, link will be in the description down below when this goes non-live, when it shows up as a pre-recording. So check back. You won't believe how the Halloween franchise actually works,
Yeah, like well,
like Inception.
yeah, like it's interesting because there's three timelines now.
There's two Halloween twos and three Halloween ones and
Yeah,
two. Yeah, it's
yeah.
crazy.
Go back to the thing, but yeah, it happens. It seems to happen more in the horror genre, as in if there's a franchise kind of thing, eventually they do become more or less of a kind of um a shadow of their former selves, kind of thing. But that's more kind of I think that the franchise probably isn't already doing too well, so the rights become cheaper, which means that the production value goes down, and that kind of the checks and balances go down,
Yeah.
and it's just easier.
Well, I think I'm gonna be the bad guy and start calling us closer to time. So I do want to try it. Everybody in the chat, Paul, I didn't ask you if I could do this, so I'm just going to do it and hope you forgive me. And it was Lisa made me think of it. If we're talking about something you're not necessarily interested in tonight, we do these shows weekly. Everybody, so like, subscribe, share, uh, turn on your notification bell, all that good stuff. Comment down below, but also don't be afraid to give us a shout about what you'd like us to talk about, particularly you, Lisa, because even if you don't catch us live next week, you can watch it recorded, and we will do. No, I'm not going to say that. We'll do whatever topic you pick, because then you're just going to set us up. I'm going to quickly move on to Ben's comment, which is genius. A transition of animal from the Muppets, animal going from animal to a neutered drummer in anything past Treasure Island. Yeah, the evolution of Animal the Muppet. Everybody knows my favorite Muppet. You usually aren't able to prove if you have a favorite Muppet, but you can if you have one of these. This little bit of show trivia, Paul. Do you remember what he used to be? Why he's here?
Yeah, he was our look at the damn camera, lads. Like
Yeah,
we,
like our first few episodes, we were looking all over the place and never looking towards the camera. So we put this little guy below it, and it was like, when you're talking, if you're not talking to me or I'm not talking to you, we'll talk to Animal.
which as you can definitely tell, one of us took that on a little bit more than the other. He was top of the class with the.
Oh,
I still don't look directly at the
no,
camera. I find it
at
weird.
different times, like we've both done psycho stares at the camera. Okay, I tend to be a bit more head on engaged, which I've had many people go, why are you staring down the lens like you want to kill me? I'm like, that is my resting crazy face. Okay, I was born with it.
It's because you haven't hit that like button strong enough. That's why I went.
That's it. And you know what happens when you hit the like button, Paul? Because I haven't said it this week. It's a little something we call tickling the analytics. So if you wouldn't mind helping us tickle the analytics and telling your friends to do the same, We have a Gonzo fan out there. Nice one. I also have Gonzo sitting just over there. And I have a fuzzy bear because Waka Waka, failed comedian, says a lot to me. You'll be working next week, so you're not going to see us. Oh, well,
If there was
doesn't mean
any,
that you can't give us a topic, though, because
oh,
we'll do it. We'll record it. You can watch it at a later time. And at least we won't be there, or you won't be there to tell us how wrong we are, which
yeah,
is like get out of jail free for us.
I was gonna say, if there's only some way that we could record these videos so that you could watch them later on, not just
Yeah.
live.
Well, we are now starting to have fun and ramble. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us, but Paul, I'd like to ask if you want to add anything in before we finish, or are we going to save all our
um,
powder for next week's show?
no, like I think we like if anyone feels like we've kind of done the characters in any way wrong, as in like go watch. First of all, go watch Last Blood if you haven't watched it, and you can
Mm.
come back to us with. Look, I'm going to say it because I want people to engage with the even with the content, as in like go watch the film. It shouldn't get as much. You should download it. Um, no, I'm only joking. Don't pirate anything. Um, which is you should yeah, watch the film and say if we're wrong, like say us what your thoughts of kind of like the Rambo kind of character. Was the character disrespected? Is he just an action star that you think shouldn't be really thought of as that much? Which I would definitely disagree that every character should be thought of as this much, you know. But yeah, let us know that as well.
I
I'd
think
be really
that's
interested in kind of like did we say right? Have we is Rocky better treated than Rambo? You know.
yeah. There's the question. So I think thanks to we're getting loads and loads of suggestions now. Just as we're about to end, we're getting loads of suggestions. I would absolutely. I was about to say Ben's just giving me the perfect out because he threw in a suggestion that has not only the Muppets but also Avengers. So we got a crossover there that if we wanted to cast it, would be a bit of fun. So I think no matter what happens, one of our future episodes, Ben, that's getting slid in somewhere. If not its own episode in entirety, I will convince Paul. I don't think I'm going to have to, um, particularly because I'm already thinking. I'm already thinking.
I've
Do
already
you
got Tony
even?
Stark and which goes
Yeah. Oh, yeah. See,
Bruce Banner.
I think he's going to make Captain America like my least favorite Muppet just to annoy me.
No, he won't. No, he's.
That's
It's going to be. I'll do it as a comedic kind of thing, which I think you'll like. Like
okay.
we'll talk after. So, but you can
Well,
all.
we're doing it. We're
We'll yeah.
doing it.
We'll give our first maybe a little bit to next week's thing on our Avengers picks, but do the original Avengers, the first film. So,
Yeah. So
Thor.
I definitely think Muppet Avengers is a thumbnail that we can make.
Yeah,
So yeah, guys, thanks a million. I'm really looking forward to doing an episode that until a few seconds ago I didn't know we were going to do. So join us next time on this fine YouTube, and you will get to see if it has to be Sam the Eagle. Thank you very much, Lisa. We're on the
see, I
same
was
page. You were
Sam
going
the
to go for
Eagles.
Beaker, weren't you?
Sam. No, see, I wasn't. But Sam the Eagles a really good point. But I would. There's a character I'd obviously choose just for a comedic effect kind of thing because you have to
Hmm.
have this. You have to have the scene. You have to have a
And
scene
this
in
is
it.
true. All right.
Um,
Well, join us next time when we probably get into a weird fight over which Muppet really would make a better Hulk.
I'm gathering.
Um,
I'm gathering that's not going to be the whole episode, but part of the like a good part of the episode is this, depending on how much of
depends
an
how wrong it
argument.
goes, Paul. Depends
Depending
how
on
wrong it
how much of
goes.
an argument, it's like, oh, I choose Miss Piggy as Black Widow. Oh, you're damn right.
It's just awful, awful casting. It's so expected. Yeah, dude. Thank you very much for this episode. It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun rambling tonight. I think this is our second long rambly episode in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying it's a trend, but it could well be. Find out next week. I've been Patrick,
And I've been Paul, and
and we'll see you next time.
we've been Heroes Out.
Oh yeah,
Bye.
we've been here side. Like, subscribe, share. Paul, say hit the bye button wherever the button is. Hit it.
Okay, I'm going to do it now. I'm going to do it now.
It does that to me all the time now.
I'm going to do it now. Okay, it's done. All right. See you later, guys.
Bye.